Good morning, everybody. Good morning, all you magnificent melon heads of the world, and happy Tuesday, everybody. Today is February 4th, 2025. The top story this morning, once again, is the trade war. Well, we've got Canada and Mexico. They blinked. Yesterday, about midday, President Trump announced that he had a productive conversation with Mexican president and that they were taking actions deploying troops along their northern border to stem the flow of fentanyl. Shortly after that, Mexican Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced that he had a productive conversation with President Trump and that Canada was taking several actions to stem the flow of fentanyl across their southern border into the United States. So we've got Canada and Mexico both, I don't want to say acquiesced or surrendered, but they gave Trump a little bit of what he wanted. They promised some actions. We'll get into a little bit more of the details of what they're going to do. And because of that, President Trump announced a 30-day delay on the implementation of those tariffs. So they never went into effect. They should have gone into effect at midnight last night, but that date has come and gone. We're back to wait for another 30 days. So I guess these negotiations will be ongoing in the meantime. Now, China, on the other hand, not so productive. China has announced a retaliation. They put 15% tariffs on about $5 billion worth of U.S. energy, a little bit of tariffs on U.S. oil, but mainly I'm thinking that's probably going to be coal and liquefied natural gas that the tariffs go on. They've also announced an antitrust action against Google, which is pretty hilarious because Google has been banned in China since forever. So they're taking antitrust action against a company that's already banned. What are you going to do? You're going to ban it again? Oh, please don't ban us a second time. Double secret ban. I don't know what. I guess that's a thing. I don't know what they're trying to do there. Also, they're announcing some retaliatory actions against NVIDIA and possibly Intel. So China's not playing so nice in the sandbox. Shocker, I know. So we'll see what comes out of that. By the way, guys, I'm still a little bit under the weather, so we're going to go a little short today again. Sorry about that. And the most hilarious story that came out yesterday, by the way, I got to talk about this one. The Sovereign Wealth Fund. President Trump signed an executive order establishing a sovereign wealth fund in the United States. And guys, I look, a lot of countries have sovereign wealth funds, like Saudi Arabia famously has a very big sovereign wealth fund. But most countries that have sovereign wealth funds have sovereign wealth. They actually operate at a surplus. You know, these tend to be like resource-rich countries. You may have noticed the United States has something of a little bit of a deficit problem, a little bit of a debt. So what's the point of having a sovereign wealth fund when you're already operating at $1 trillion a year deficit? What are we going to do? We're going to print even more money in order to put it into the sovereign wealth fund? I mean, like, look, before the election, I said a lot on this channel how it doesn't really matter who wins in the White House. It's gonna come out a little different, but the net result is going to be the same. It's going to be more monetary debasement, more money printing, and more inflation. And I would love to be wrong about that. But when I hear President Trump talking about a sovereign wealth fund, guys, where's the money going to come from? It's going to come from borrowing. It's going to come from the bond market. And if we're borrowing money, which almost always leads to the Fed monetizing that debt, and then we're going to use that money to bid up asset prices, well, guess what? That's inflationary. So the sovereign wealth fund, I don't know. Maybe they're going to put TikTok in it. That seems to be their big. I don't get all this energy around TikTok. I really don't. But basically, a sovereign wealth fund. When you're a country that's operating on a deficit and you start a sovereign wealth fund, that's like standing in a bucket and then grabbing the handle and trying to pick yourself up by it. Seems like a great idea, but somehow it just never seems to work. But I don't know. Hey, maybe we can put U.S. Treasuries in our sovereign wealth fund. Now we're thinking outside the box. So we got that one yesterday. Also this morning, we've got earnings from Pepsi. Big revenue miss. That is their third straight. Frito-Lay and Quaker Foods in particular in North America are not doing so well here. It seems inflation continues to take a bite out of consumer spending habits, possibly the effects of Ozempic showing there as well. So PepsiCo not doing so good this morning. Estee Lauder, meanwhile, just posted a big-time miss. They reported a loss, sales down 6%. They're forecasting sales down 10 to 12%. So things are getting worse at Estee Lauder, as well as announcing layoffs of between 5,800 and 7,000 people. So that stock is getting clobbered this morning. And then one stock that's definitely not getting clobbered this morning is AI darling Palantir. They reported earnings yesterday. That stock is up double digits. Another one of the AI mania stocks is doing really well. Why don't we shrink my big melon of a head and let's see what's going on in these markets today. And guys, if you don't mind, hit that like button and that subscribe button. Come on back tomorrow because we do this every day. And normally I don't sound like this. So come on, have your coffee with the melon heads every morning as we go through markets. And right now the S&P doing a lot better than it was yesterday. We're actually up 4 points here, 0.07% higher. The Dow, meanwhile, slightly negative, 0.12% lower. That's about 54 points to the downside. And the NASDAQ is up a little bit here, 36 points, 0.17% higher. So stocks not doing a whole lot this morning. The DXY, meanwhile, is heading lower. We're at 108.37. That's down about 4 basis points, well off the highs that we saw yesterday. We were almost in the neighborhood of 110 yesterday. So we've got a weaker dollar this morning. And then looking over at the bond market, we've got yields are mostly higher this morning. The 30-year Treasury, 4.824. That's up about 5 basis points. The 10-year, meanwhile, 4.579. That's up 3.5 points. The 2-year, meanwhile, is at 4.263. That's essentially unchanged. And the 1 month is at 4.323, down a fraction of a point. Looking over at the commodities board, we got another all-time high for gold. Check out this gold this morning. Spot is at $2,834. That's up another $20 or 0.7% higher. Congratulations to the stackers. Your patience is being rewarded. And silver is getting in on it too. We've got spot silver is almost $32 here, $31.98. That's up about 39 cents or 1.25% this morning. We've got copper is 0.5% higher. Platinum is pretty much unchanged. Palladium is down about 2%. And oil is giving up all its gains from yesterday. It's now actually a bit lower, 3% down this morning, down about $2.17, trading at $70.97. Also on the commodities front, guys, take a look at this one. And you've all heard about the Waffle House indicator. You know, when Jim Cantori ends up in front of a Waffle House on the Weather Channel, you know something bad is happening. So I don't know what you make of this. Maybe there's going to be a Waffle House indicator for inflation now. But Waffle House is temporarily adding a 50-cent per egg surcharge to all menus. That's a bit much, guys. 50 cents per egg, that's $6 a dozen. Maybe you're picking out just a little bit here, Waffle House. Maybe just a little bit. So I don't know. Take from that what you may. Maybe it's bird flu. Maybe that's why my voice sounds like this. Maybe I've got the highly pathogenic avian flu. I don't know. And next thing you know, I'm going to have the World Health Organization banging down my door trying to quarantine me. By the way, thank you for everybody who recommended Buckley's in the chat yesterday. Gigi says she ordered some Buckley's for me. So looking forward to that. I hear that stuff tastes terrible. Also, looking over at Bitcoin this morning, it is lower again, $98,944. That's off by about $2,500. We did rally to about $102,600 yesterday. Now we're giving that back again, but Bitcoin has been volatile as all get out since this trade war started, and that is continuing this morning. All right, moving on. Let's talk a little bit about these tariff stories this morning, shall we? Trump pauses tariffs on Canada imports for 30 days after doing the same thing for Mexico. President Donald Trump on Monday agreed to pause implementation of planned U.S. tariffs on imports from Canada for at least 30 days, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said. The pause was announced in a tweet by Trudeau hours after Trump and Mexico's president said Trump would pause for 1 month planned tariffs on imports from Mexico. In both cases, the pause came after those countries agreed to take steps toward preventing the trafficking of the deadly opioid fentanyl into the U.S. Let's see. Canada is implementing our $1.3 billion border plan, reinforcing the border with new choppers, technology, and personnel, enhanced coordination with our American partners, and increased resources to stop the flow of fentanyl, the Prime Minister wrote. Nearly 10,000 frontline personnel are and will be working on protecting the border. Proposed tariffs will be paused for at least 30 days while we work together. So that is a slightly more friendly tone than we had about, yesterday, 24 hours ago. Now, earlier on Monday, Trump paused tariffs on Mexican imports after the country's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, said she would immediately send 10,000 soldiers to her northern border to stem fentanyl shipments into the U.S. The vast majority of fentanyl seized at U.S. borders comes from Mexico. So we've got Canada and Mexico are playing slightly nicer in the sandbox this morning, and the tariffs have been delayed by 30 days as a result of that. China, on the other hand, not so much. China hits back against Trump with tariffs. Why don't we start this again? Sorry, I'm about as sharp as wet leather this morning, guys. China hits back against Trump's tariffs with targeted actions. There, was that so hard? The moves include 10 to 15% levies on U.S. energy and agricultural tools, and measures targeting firms are seen as a warning shot to America. China retaliated to Donald Trump's opening trade war tariffs by targeting a handful of American companies and slapping levies on some U.S. goods in a move seemingly designed to avoid escalating tensions between the world's biggest economies. Beijing imposed a 15% levy on less than $5 billion of U.S. energy imports and a moderate 10% fee on American oil and agricultural equipment on Tuesday, moments after new U.S. tariffs entered effect. China said it will also investigate Google for alleged antitrust violations, although Alphabet's search services have been unavailable in the country since 2010. And again, like, what are you going to do? You're going to ban it again? Oh, please don't ban my search engine for a second time. In more targeted measures, authorities put Calvin Klein owner PVH and U.S. gene sequencing company Illumina on a so-called blacklist of entities that could affect their sizable operations in China and impose new export controls on tungsten and other critical metals used in electronic, aviation, and defense industries. Now, look, Calvin Klein, like, oh, you blacklisted our underwear company. Oh, please don't. The tungsten and the rare earth metals, that could potentially cause problems for us because the United States has almost no domestic production of rare earth metals. We get almost all of it from China. We also got this one that hit the tape just a few minutes ago. China targets Google, NVIDIA, and Intel as Trump tariffs bite. Beijing has revived antitrust investigations into Google and NVIDIA while considering a new probe against Intel as China looks for new leverage against U.S. President Donald Trump. China's State Administration for Market Regulation announced on Tuesday that it had opened a competition investigation into Google, which two people familiar with the matter said would focus on dominance of U.S. Group's Android operating system and any harm caused to Chinese phone makers such as Oppo and Xiaomi, which use the software. All right, switching gears a little bit. And, this story, this one, I got to say, guys, this is one of the dumbest things I've read in a long time. Like, if somebody knows what they're hoping to accomplish with this story, please let me know in the comments. But this just struck me as so counterproductive. Trump signs order establishing a sovereign wealth fund that he says could buy TikTok. And again, TikTok, I'm just overlooking that. Like, why would we want the U.S. government to own TikTok? The only thing I hate more than big tech is the U.S. government. So, okay, I guess the U.S. government's going to get in the TikTok business. That's going to be great. President Donald Trump on Monday signed an executive order that outlines plans for a government-run sovereign wealth fund to serve as an economic development tool and perhaps be used to buy TikTok. Among the aims for the fund would be developing infrastructure such as airports and highways, and it could help the U.S. extend its influence in areas such as Panama and Greenland. We're going to stand this thing up within the next 12 months. We're going to monetize the asset side of the U.S. balance sheet for the American people, said U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent during a media parlay. There'll be a combination of liquid assets that we have in this country as we work to bring them out for the American people. What does that mean? I don't know. What does it mean when you bring assets out for the American people? Is that an official financial term that I'm not familiar with to bring them out? I don't know. Apparently they're in now, but we're going to bring them out and it's going to be great. Hey, admittedly, guys, I have no formal financial background. So if somebody wants to provide some clarity on what it means to bring out financial assets, I'd love to hear it. And CNBC is stating the obvious here. Though the idea of such a U.S. fund has been brought up before, the vehicles are generally used by smaller nations with vast natural resources, as well as fiscal surpluses to deploy, unlike the U.S., which has been running massive budget deficits. Guys, we're talking about monetizing assets here. We're talking about borrowing printed money and pumping it into the asset side of the financial world. This is highly inflationary, and I'll say it, this is just flat out stupid. What are we going to do? We're going to put U.S. treasuries in our sovereign wealth fund, so we're going to borrow money from ourselves and then put that debt in a bucket, call it the sovereign wealth fund, and then act like we've bought assets out for the American people. I really don't know what we're trying to do here. Anyway, somebody want to shed some light on this for me, because I clearly just do not get what the point of this thing is. All right, let's talk a little bit about Pepsi's earnings this morning. PepsiCo revenue misses amid subdued trends and Quaker Oats recall fallout. Profit extends a long streak of beats and dividend raised to 5%, while Frito-Lay and Quaker Foods see some revenue weakness. Shares of PepsiCo were taking a hit in early trading on Tuesday after the beverage and snack giant reported a slight decline in quarterly revenue amid weakness in its North American Frito-Lay and Quaker Foods business. Meanwhile, profit rose and extended its long streak of beats, and the company boosted its dividend by 5%, lifting the stock's yield to triple that of the S&P 500. For the fourth quarter, though, ended December 28th, net revenue declined 0.2% from a year ago to $27.78 billion. That's down from $27.85 billion, while the consensus was for $27.89. So that's a miss on revenue. That marked the third straight quarter in which revenue missed forecasts. Revenue for Frito-Lay's North America fell 2.1%. Quaker Foods' North American revenue was also down by 2.1%, while Pepsi's beverages in North America revenue were little changed at $7.91 billion. So it looks like inflation taking a bite out of consumers' budgets is taking a hit, or not so good for Pepsi's revenue here. That stock down about 2.5% this morning ahead of the opening bell, trading at $146.58. That's off by about $3.70. And another one taking a beating this morning is Estee Lauder. Estee Lauder to cut up to 7,000 jobs as it swings to a loss, sending the stock lower. Seems the cosmetics business is not doing so hot here this morning. Estee Lauder stock fell 6.4% early Tuesday after the beauty and cosmetics company swung to a fiscal second quarter loss and announced an expansion of its current restructuring aimed at restoring sustainable sales growth. The company said they now expect to cut 5,800 to 7,000 jobs and to book charges of $1.2 to $1.6 billion before taxes. That's expected to drive benefits ranging from $0.8 billion to $1 billion. While we recognize there is much work to do, we are confident that Beauty Reimagined is the way to realize our ambition, said CEO Stephanie Dela, something I can't pronounce. Sales fell 6% to $4.004 billion. That's ahead of the $3.977 billion FactSet consensus. The company is now expecting third quarter sales to fall 12 to 10% and to be down 10% to 8%, excluding the impact of currency and acquisitions. So not only are things at Estee Lauder not doing so well, but they're going to get worse, forecasting a 12% decline in sales here. And the stock is reflecting that reality this morning, down 5.5%, trading at $78.19. That's off by about $4.60 here. And meanwhile, we've got Palantir, another AI stock, posting amazing results. Palantir shares jump on upbeat revenue outlook as businesses adopt AI. Palantir shares rallied over 18% in pre-market trading after it forecast upbeat annual revenue fueled by strong demand for its software and data analytics services from businesses racing to adopt generative AI. Palantir, which provides services to governments such as software that visualizes army positions, is set to gain about $35 billion in market cap at current share price of $99.31. It's yet another company to be riding the AI wave, benefiting from multiple industries pressing the button on big investment to improve their technological capabilities, said Ross Mould, investment director at AJ Bell. Palantir is the Michael Jordan of AI stocks right now, not only capturing investors' imagination, but delivering game-winning shots when it counts, said Matt Britzman, senior equity analyst at Hargraves. By the way, when you start to hear stupid talking points like the Michael Jordan of AI stocks, that's when you might want to take a second look at a company when stupid talking points like that get trotted out. Palantir's 12-month forward price-to-earnings ratio stands at 160.93 times forward earnings. Okay, if only there were signs, 160 times forward earnings. That's compared with Snowflake's much more modest 181 times earnings and Datadog's 67. Good God, these stocks are trading at ridiculous valuations. But look, Palantir's up another 23% here, $102.90. That's up by more than $19 this morning. And I just want to say thank you. Where is it here? There we go. Thank you very much to Nashville Pasta Man. What's going on, Pasta Man? He says, if government has money, for a sovereign wealth fund. How about tax rebates? Now we're talking here, Pasta Man, right? I mean, the short answer is the government doesn't have money for a sovereign wealth fund. I mean, that's what they're not saying, right? We're operating at $1 trillion loss a year. Where is this sovereign wealth coming from? There is no sovereign wealth to put in your sovereign wealth fund. And you're right. If we did have money, why not just lower taxes instead? Fantastic point. We have a spending problem, and a sovereign wealth fund makes our spending problem worse. And that's why I've been saying all along, it did not matter who won the election. Either way, our spending problems are going to get worse. But maybe we'll have the Doge people take a look at a sovereign wealth fund and realize, hey, when you're operating at $1 trillion deficit, it's kind of stupid to start a sovereign wealth fund. I just throw them out there. You guys do what you want with them. Thank you very much, Nashville Pasta Man. I appreciate that, sir. And thank you, Carl Bork. I appreciate the super chat, sir. No messages here. Let me just see. Nope, I don't see any messages. Just being a swell guy. Well, thank you so much, Carl. I appreciate the support of the channel. And Dragon Slayer 1 gifted 10 Nobody Special Finance memberships. Thank you, Dragon Slayer. Guys, if you receive one of those memberships, be sure and let the Slayer of Dragons know your gratitude. Thanks again for supporting the channel. And Chuck G says, I wholly disagree with a wealth fund. Keep government out of business. Yes, Charles, I 100% agree with your wholly disagreement. I hope you feel better, man. Thank you very much. Appreciate the good vibes, sir. And the well wishes. I hope to feel better too. This pretty much sucks. It hurts to talk. And well, when you run a morning news show, you kind of have to talk, don't you? Anyways, thank you so much, Charles, for supporting the channel. Thank you, everybody, for putting up with my nasty voice again this morning. I appreciate that very much. Thank you for all the super chats and the support of the channel, as well as thank you to my magnanimous melonheads on YouTube and Patreon for everything you guys do for the channel. Links down below, should you feel so inclined. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. I love you guys. Don't forget that like button on the way out and that subscribe button. Until next time, live small and dream big.